So what is Packet Tracer? It's a free application by Cisco Systems, the same company that creates routers and switches. This application allows you to create and simulate computer networks. And a great part of this program is that you can visually see all the devices and how they connect. So let's go over 5 reasons why you should be using Packet Tracer. It's easy to use and see how devices connect. The operating system of the router and switches, known as the Internetworking Operating System, or iOS, not the same as a phone, are almost the same as the real routers and switches. You can build experience by creating networks and troubleshooting them without spending tons of money on equipment. You can add that experience to your resume, and you can also download labs with pre-built networks to practice with. So let's look at how different Packet Tracer activities can be turned into experience on your resume. Connecting routers, switches, and PCs in Packet Tracer can be stated as having installed routers and switches to connect networks. Configuring 2901 routers to connect some networks can be stated as configured 2901 routers in order to connect different subnetworks. If you configure VLAN to Packet Tracer on a 3560 switch, then you configured 3560 switches and configured VLANs. Configure DHCP on PCs, well, then you configure dynamic IPs for PCs utilizing DHCP. If you configure BGP peering to connect two networks, then you configured BGP routing to connect different autonomous systems. Configured OSPF peering to connect routers, well, then you configured OSPF interior gateway routing protocols. I hope you're seeing the possibilities that hands-on experience with Packet Tracer and a bit of wordsmithing can do for your resume. So now that we've talked up Cisco Packet Tracer, let's actually download it. So go to the link in the chat, sign up for Skills for All using your Google account. Then you're going to scroll down to the bottom of the page. And so an example here, go to the bottom page, you click sign up. And on the sign up page, you select Google. And then you fill out the next page. After you do that, you agree to the terms and conditions. Go back to the link in the chat, scroll down to the Packet Tracer resource, and then download the correct version for your system. So here's kind of what it looks like. So here's the terms and conditions page. Click accept and continue. This is what it looks like when you scroll down to the bottom to the Packet Tracer resource section, and then you download the correct version for your operating system, whether you have a Mac, Windows, or Ubuntu. So there are a bunch of different types of switches you may run across. So here's a look at some of the common types. We'll start from the least amount of switches to the most. First, we have the 4-port unmanaged switch. So unmanaged means we can't configure it. Comes as is. Next, we have an 8-port managed switch with PoE, or power over Ethernet. Since it's managed, we can configure it, and with PoE, the switch will also give electric power to the device that it's connected to. As long as it's connected to a PoE port on the switch. So the PoE port will allow it to give power to whatever that device is. An example could be if you had a wireless access point that needed electricity, you could just plug it into a PoE port on the switch. That way it's connected to the switch and it's getting power, instead of having to plug it into an outlet. So then we have 16-port unmanaged switch. So this is another one that comes as is. 24-port managed switch. So this is one of the more common ones you're going to find in companies. And then 48-port managed switch. So both the 24 and the 48-port managed switch are the most common in company environments. On Packet Tracer, you can actually see the physical view of the switch you're using by double-clicking on the device. Then there's also the CLI, or command line interface tab. This is where you type in commands to configure the device. So if this was real life, you would use your laptop and connect through a console cable to the console port on the switch. And then you would pull up a terminal terminal emulation program like PuTTY, which would be the command line interface. And that's how you're going to be doing all the exercises. You're going to do it as if you're really connected to it, and like if it's a real thing. So you're not going to use the command line interface tab. You're going to be using the terminal emulation on the virtual laptop and connecting it through a console cable. All right, so switches have 3 access levels, and each access level has different commands. And you can find out which commands are available by typing in the question mark button. So you click in the question mark, and it shows the list of commands for that, for where you are in that access level. First access level being user access mode. That's the initial startup mode. And you can tell by the little caret. It gives you the least amount of access. For the next piece, the next level of access is the privilege exec mode. By typing in enable, or EN for short, that's how you get to privilege exec mode. You can tell you're in privilege exec mode by the hashtag on next to the switch name. From privilege exec mode, we can then get into global configuration mode using the configure terminal, or config T command for short. Then from global configuration mode, you can get into the sub configuration modes. So for example, this configuration mode configures the interfaces on the switch. We can get into the interface configuration mode by typing in the interface and then the interface's name. So here's the interface and the interface name. So this is fast Ethernet 0/1. And you can see here it says config-if, which means we're in interface configuration mode. Next, we have line configuration mode. So this is the mode that's used to modify settings for telnet, SSH, or console cables. So basically, line configuration mode is to modify configuration of connections to the switch. Here you can see we put line and then console 0. So we're looking at the console mode here, configuration for the line console here. So config-line is line configuration mode. And we did line, and this is the line name.